Hello class, welcome to lab number 2, installing Ubuntu. So over here we are gonna have a table of content with all the steps properly laid out for us to complete this lab. So let's go ahead and move along to the presentations. So requirements, please go over the presentations before we do this lab. It's not mandatory, it's a recommendation that I'm giving you so that you have an overall idea of what we're going to accomplish here. Please go slow, take your time to do this lab, be meticulous and follow instructions as they have been laid out. Because if you make mistakes along the way, 9 times out of 10 you're gonna have to start all over again. So please take it slow. This lab is comprehensive and it is intended to teach you how to not only install Ubuntu but also how to create virtual machines and how to use them. This is not the first time, this is not the last time that you're gonna have to create virtual machines, so I'm pretty sure there is a lot to learn here and that you're gonna actually take advantage of this lab. So be aware that these presentations use an earlier version of VirtualBox and also of Ubuntu. They use Ubuntu 20.04. But the differences between the newest version and the previous one, they are not that significant. And you should be able to follow along anyway. And again, it's only looking at the presentations. That's all you have to do. Note, only start this lab after you have either attended the lecture or actually seen the presentations so that you are not blind. If your computer doesn't meet the minimum requirement for this lab, contact me and then we can talk about it. I will do this on a one-on-one basis, so please don't wait until the last minute to do this lab. Now let's start with the step number 1. I forgot to mention, because of the length of this lab, I'm going to try to put the timestamps of each of the steps in the video description. Now, before you can create virtual machines, you need to know if your computer can virtualize. There are some steps that you need to take, but they are laid out over here. So for macOS users, if you're using a Mac computer, MacBook Pro, with an M1 or an M2 CPU, please stop this lab because you won't be able to follow these instructions. Unfortunately, VirtualBox doesn't run well there, and you won't be able to use it. There is another hypervisor that you can use called UTM. Based on past experiences, students have had good results, well, in reality mixed results, completing the assigned coursework and using this hypervisor in their Mac computer. So I advise you to proceed at your own risk, and whenever you have an issue, talk to me earlier rather than later, right? So speak your mind soon. Now, you can follow this tutorial over here if you're a Mac user. This tutorial,
hello everybody,
is actually pretty good on how to install Ubuntu on an M1 Mac. So I think you should be able to follow along and complete it. Now, another thing that I want to say is, if you're not very good at using your computer, you have some gaps in your knowledge on how to use your Mac computer, it's gonna get challenging to get the job done. So one thing that you can do is you can schedule a tutoring session with me and we can see if we can complete it together in your computer. I am also trying to get my hands on an M1 Mac so that I can do the tutorial myself. But in case I don't get my hands on a Mac computer, please follow that video that I linked over there. I think it's pretty good. If you have an Intel Mac, you're good to go. Just continue to step number 2. Virtualization is enabled for you and VirtualBox is fully supported. You should have no issues at all. Now for Windows users, let's get started. Now for Windows users, first of all, you need to find out what hardware your computer has. That's the first step. So there are many ways that you can do this. You can do it via Task Manager. For example, here I am on Windows 10. So I'm just going to do Task Manager. And then from here, I can go to Performance. And here I'm going to get information about my CPU, information about the amount of memory that I have available in my system, and so on. You can also use an application called Speci. I have it already installed. You can just find this application by Googling Speci. And this is also going to give you a summary of your system hardware. Let me see if I can zoom in over here. I cannot. So as you can see, my computer has 32 gigabytes of RAM. It has a Ryzen 5 2600. And in terms of storage, here it has, these are the storage that it has attached. For example, And when you click on CPU, here I can get more detailed information about the CPU my computer have. Now, you can also use another Windows native application called System Information. And here you can also find out all the information that you need in order for you to understand the hardware that your computer have. Now, what I care about is the CPU and the number of cores that you have, right? It's either dual core, quad core, 6 core, 12 cores, and so on. The amount of RAM that your computer has, and the amount of free storage you have available. The requirements, the requirements that your computer needs to meet are a quad-core CPU, 8 gigabytes of RAM or more, and 60 gigabytes of storage, of available storage, or more, of course. Now, how do we know if the computer actually supports virtualization? Again, there are many ways that you can do it. You can follow this guide over here, and it's gonna guide you to how you know if your computer has or doesn't have virtualization. So let's do it here in my computer. First, I'm gonna do the easiest way, which is opening Task Manager and clicking on Performance and then on CPU. If virtualization is enabled, it's gonna be displayed over here as virtualization enabled. If it's disabled, it's gonna say disabled. If virtualization is not supported, this row over here will not be displayed at all. If your computer has virtualization but is disabled, follow the guide over here so that you can learn how to enable it. That is going to vary from computer to computer. If you're having problems in that step, please reach out to me and we can do it together. With that said, we can move along to step number 2, right? Only move along to step number 2 once you have verified that virtualization is enabled and that your computer meets the minimum requirements for you to actually use it for the class. Now, before we can start creating virtual machines, we need a hypervisor, in this case VirtualBox, and in order for us to install it, all we have to do is go to these 2 links over here. We need to install VirtualBox, we need to get the installer, and we need the Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable library. So when you get to the VirtualBox page, make sure that you download the Windows host if you are on Windows, and if you're on Mac, you download the Mac, again, only for Intel Macs. And then here we have the VirtualBox extension pack, so you need to download the installer and you also need to download the extension pack. Once you have downloaded these 2 files, then go to the Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable and then just click on this one over here, x86-64 architecture. That's the CPU that we're using. So you click on this link and it will download the file that you need. I have already downloaded those files, so we're good. Now, the next file that you need to download is the ISO image of Ubuntu, so the installation disk of Ubuntu. To do so, you can click on this link over here and it's going to take you straight to the download page of Ubuntu. So all you have to do, this is the version we have, just click on download Ubuntu 22.03 and then the ISO file will download for you. So if I click on download, this page shows up, and give it a second or 2, and here is when it's asking me where do you want to save the file. I'm going to save this here in my downloads folder. I'm going to click cancel because I already downloaded this file previously. Once we have all the files that we need, we can then get started. First of all, let's install VirtualBox. So I'm going to pause that for a moment and I'm going to go to downloads, and here we have the VirtualBox installer. I click on yes over here, and this is a very straightforward installer. So just click on next, click on yes, yes, install, give it a second. The installer is done, so we're just gonna click on finish. Now here is how the VirtualBox Manager window looks like. Now we need to install the VirtualBox extension pack. Now some of you might have problems installing the extension pack, and if you do, please reach out to me and we'll troubleshoot it together. After you install VirtualBox Extension Manager, the icon should change to this. It should look like this, and all you have to do is double click and it will open a second VirtualBox Manager window, and all you have to do is click on install. Then you click on agree. Let me close the second window. Now to verify if the extension pack is installed, you can go to File, Tools, Extension Pack Manager, and if you see it with a check mark over here, you are good. Another way that you can install this if you're having problems with method number 1 is by clicking on install. and then clicking on the installer, then clicking on open. And that is gonna prompt you to install, right? Obviously it's prompting me to reinstall because I already have it installed. So those two methods are the way in which you can install the extension pack. Again, if you're having problems installing the extension pack, especially on Windows 11, that's where I have noticed this issue, get in contact with me and we'll figure it out together. Oh, okay, so apologies for that. I just received a phone call, so I had to pause the recording. Now we're gonna switch this back to the welcome window and we're gonna leave it like this. So just gonna minimize this for now. Let's go back to the instructions. Now that we have VirtualBox installed, we need to create a virtual machine that meets these requirements. So what we're gonna do is, if you want, you can pause the video and follow this GIF over here, or GIF, I don't know how to pronounce that word properly, and then follow it over here. It's the same thing that I'm gonna do in the video. So I'm just gonna leave my settings over here on the side, and I'm gonna put this on one corner and then my VirtualBox manager on another. I just wanna make sure that I have it for reference over here on the side. So I'm gonna click on new. By the way, you can also access this menu from file, and I'm gonna name this. I'm gonna name this Ubuntu Desktop, and then the version of Ubuntu, which is 22.04. Now, the ISO image is the installer that we downloaded, right? The virtual CD that we downloaded. So I'm gonna click on other, and then I'm gonna go to my downloads folder and click on the ISO file. Do not mount the disk. Do not open the disk. We are gonna use it as is. So click on open, and now we're gonna click on skip unattended installation. It is canonical that you click on this icon over here, because otherwise Ubuntu is gonna create an account by default and it's gonna do what is called an unattended installation, which means it's an installation that is gonna take predefined settings, but then you're not gonna have full control of that VM. So we don't want that. We want full control of this, and we also want to do this the manual way. We want to see how everything actually works. So make sure you click on skip unattended installation. Now we're gonna click on next. Here we're gonna provide the base memory. I have 32 gigabytes of memory available in my computer, but by default Ubuntu is gonna give you 2. If you want, if you have as much memory as I do, you can give it 4 gigabytes of RAM. That's fine. With 2 gigabytes of RAM, the machine is gonna run fine, but the more the better. Just don't go crazy and give it 8 gigabytes of RAM. That's just a waste. You're never, at least for my class, you're not gonna use that much RAM. As much, we're gonna use 4. So again, you can do 2 or 4, that's up to you. I'm gonna follow the defaults and I'm gonna use 2 gigabytes of RAM over here. So over here, we're gonna select the number of cores that we're gonna assign to our machine. Ubuntu requires a dual core CPU, so we're gonna give it 2 cores. We don't need to give it more than 2. Like, that's perfectly fine, unless you have a lot of cores in your machine and you just wanna go crazy, but please don't do that. 2 cores, 2 gigabytes of RAM is fine. If you want the machine to be a little faster, then 4 gigabytes of RAM and still 2 cores is perfectly fine. We're not gonna use EFI, so we're gonna just move along over here. Now, this is the size of the virtual hard drive that Ubuntu is going to use. As you can see here, we selected 40 gigabytes. 40 is more than enough for everything that we're gonna do in the semester. We're not gonna exceed 40 gigabytes, that's fine. Click on next, and now we're gonna click on finish. Here's just an overview of everything we've done so far. So we're gonna click on finish. There are some other settings we need to change, so we're gonna click on settings over here. Let's start with advanced, and here we're gonna change this to bidirectional. Bidirectional. This is these settings over here. Now in the description here, we're gonna type some basic information so that we don't forget it. So the host name, or the name of the computer, is gonna be CIS106. The username is gonna be your Blackboard username. In my case, is RA Alberto. And then the password, we're gonna keep it simple. This is a test environment. This is an isolated environment, a labbing environment. This doesn't require a 48 character password. There is no need for none of that. This environment is isolated enough so that we can just create something simple and very straightforward, right? Again, this is just the predefined defaults that we're gonna use. You are welcome to pick a different username. You're welcome to give it a different host name. If you wanna call it Platano, I'm okay with that. I don't particularly mind, because these are just predefined settings that we decide to choose for our class. Again, you have free will over here on whatever you wanna do. We won't be using disk encryption, so leave this as is. Then in system here, we're gonna leave everything as is, except that we're gonna remove the floppy disk because it's not 1970s anymore. processor is fine, everything else over here is fine. And then in display, we are going to enable 3D acceleration, and then we are going to crank this up all the way to 128 megabytes. That is the size of the video card that our virtual machine is going to use. And then obviously we're going to need 3D acceleration for better performance. If you're having problems with your VM, sometimes it is caused by 3D acceleration. So you can either disable this or play around with the driver that you get over here. It's just a matter of trying to see what works for you. But for 99% of you, this is going to work just fine. Storage we're going to leave as is. The audio we're going to disable. We're not going to be listening to music or watching videos on the VM. You know, it's not even powerful enough for that anyway. So we're going to disable the audio input. There is going to be no audio card here. Network leave it as is. Later on in the semester we're going to play around with this, but for now everything is fine. Now you can leave the rest as is and then just click on OK. Your virtual machine is ready and you have finished step number 2 of the guide. Notice that your settings should match this screenshot over here. This is the basic. This is just the bare minimum. What you see over here. Either match this or exceed this is fine. Now we're going to start with step number 3, the installation of the operating system. And to start this virtual machine, just click on Start. And beautiful. Now, when you click inside the virtual machine, your mouse and keyboard is gonna be captured by the virtual machine. So your host computer no longer has control over them. Your virtual machine does. If you want to return control of the mouse and keyboard to your host machine, to Windows, press the right control key on the keyboard and notice how my cursor appears again. Again, I'm just gonna click inside, click on capture, and now we're gonna simply click on try or install Ubuntu. The first thing that the installer is going to do is that it's going to check that the virtual DVD, the ISO file that we downloaded from the internet, has no issues and is actually working as it should. Once the check is over, we are going to be presented with the Ubuntu installer. It would allow us to either try the operating system in a live environment or we can just proceed with the installation. In this case, we're just going to proceed with the installation, but you're welcome to try out the live environment if you choose to do so. So to try the live environment, click on Try Ubuntu. To install, obviously click on Install Ubuntu. By default, it's going to select the language of our system. English US is fine for me. Then we're going to select normal installation, and then we're going to install third-party software, as we will need that. Give it a second. Now we're going to select on Erase Disk and install Ubuntu. This is using the virtual disk that we created of 40 gigabytes during the setup process. So just going to click on Install Now. And this is just a summary of what the installer is going to do to that make-believe drive. So click on Continue. Select your time zone. Automatically it's going to pick it based on your system clock. And now provide your name. Remember when we did this area over here, this is why we type this over here, so that we can use it here, right? So the name of your name, you know, you can just provide your name over here, right? In my case, Robert, right? I'd like to provide my username over here because I want to see my username when I'm trying to log in. I don't want to see my name, so I'm just gonna do RA Alberto, and then for the computer name or host name, we're gonna do CIS 106. Sorry, CIS 106. For the username, that's fine. Username is gonna be RA Alberto, and then for the password, I'm gonna do PCCC, PCCC. Just a very simple, super secure password, JK, that we're gonna use here so that troubleshooting is easier later on. Make sure you click on Require my password to log in. Now, just go grab a cup of coffee, you know, or a Red Bull or a Coke, whatever you want. In 10 to 12 minutes, this installer is gonna be done, and we will return to that. I will pause the video for now, and then I'll return to it once the installer has completed its process. Okie dokie, so at this point, the operating system is installed and ready to be used. So now we're just gonna click on Restart Now. When you get to this screen, simply press the Enter key, and it will automatically remove the installer disk. Okay, we are almost there. Perfect. So now we can just click on our username and type our super secure password. And we're gonna be greeted with a welcome screen that is gonna explain us a little bit about what the operating system is all about. So we're just gonna skip this welcome wizard. There's nothing here that we need to care about. Oh, I forgot to, yeah, let's just click on wait. I forgot to click on no, but that's fine. And then you click on next, and then we click on done. Now, at this point, you are free to use the computer. Like, Ubuntu is ready to be used. It has all the tools that we need for a fully functional operating system. But because we're running on a virtual machine, we are gonna need to do some optimization here just to make this work a little better. So what we're gonna do is, I'm gonna put this on the side, and we're gonna move along to step number 4. The first thing that we need to do is an update and an upgrade of the system. So we're gonna click here, then we're gonna click on terminal, and then we're gonna type sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. Type your password. Notice that nothing is gonna be displayed on the screen when you're typing your password, but your password is being typed. If you get this prompt for a software updated, please close it right away because that's gonna interfere with the update that we're gonna run. So it seems like the only thing that is gonna be used is 45 megabytes of space, so my update should be very quick. And yours should be also very quick as well because not many updates have been released since the latest version of the disk came out. Again, it could take a little bit of time, so I'm just gonna pause the video right now and then I'm gonna return to it once the update has completed. So now that the update has completed, we can move along with the next step. So here we are gonna customize some of the things that happen when we do software updates. So we're gonna click on the menu again and we're gonna type software and updates. Is this blue icon over here? Now make sure that all of these are checked except this one. Don't check this one, just all of this. Now in updates, make sure you change this from daily to never. We are gonna choose when we are gonna do the software updates, right? Because this is a labbing environment. This is, you know, a testing environment. So we don't want to be reminded of updates and things like that. We want to decide when we are gonna do updates ourselves. It's just better that way when you are in a testing environment like this. And after you do this, that's fine. You can just click on close and you're good to go. Here is the same thing that I just did in the video. So I'm just gonna move along to the next phase. Now we're gonna change the display server from Wayland to Xorg because there is one particular application that we're gonna be using that doesn't work well on Wayland, and that application is called Flameshot. So to do that, we are gonna click over here and we're gonna click on logout. Right? This is what I mean when I say do it graphically. See the video below. So click on your username and then click over here in the gears icon and then change it to Ubuntu on Xorg. Now type your password and it's gonna look the same. Nothing changed. It's just that Xorg just works better for what we're trying to do over here. Now we are gonna make that change permanent. So we're gonna open the terminal one more time. And here we're gonna type sudo gedit etc gdm3 custom.config or custom.conf. Press enter over here and type your password. This is gonna open a text editor with administrator privileges. And we're gonna uncomment line number 7 that says Wayland enable equal false. To uncomment this, all we have to do is remove the pound sign at the beginning and then just click on save. Close the text editor and we have made that change permanent. Again, these two images show you exactly what I just did in the video. Next, we're going to install the guest additions for VirtualBox. And you might be wondering, what is that for? Well, if I try to go full screen now, notice that Ubuntu is still using just a portion of the window. We want to be able to use the full screen so that we have more room in the window to work in our virtual machine, so we can have the text editor open in one side and then a terminal open on the other, and so on. It will also allow us to share the clipboard between the host OS, Windows, and the guest OS, which is Linux. To do that, we're simply gonna type in devices, and then we're gonna click on insert guest addition CD image. This is gonna mount a CD in our computer. Notice the icon over here. Let's close this terminal, we don't need it. Let's open the disk, and let's right click on an empty area of the file manager and then click on open in terminal. Now we're gonna type sudo period / capital V as in Victor box B box L Linux additions.run. Here's how I did it. Again, period / V B, and then press the tab key on your keyboard to autocomplete the word, L, and then press the tab key on your keyboard again to autocomplete the installer for Linux. Press enter over here and type your password. This is gonna take a little bit, and then once it's done, we are gonna restart our computer. I forgot to install this, but we can install it afterwards. Although I'm pretty sure it has already been installed. So, okay, now you can go full screen with no problem, and it will go full screen. But for the clipboard to work, we will need to do a reboot of our system. So I'm just gonna go again, small screen, so that I can continue following my instructions here. Okay, now that I've received my prompt back, I'm just gonna run this command again. Sorry, I'm just gonna run this command at the top. Actually, we're gonna run this after we restart the computer. Why not? Let's just get that out of the way right away. So you can restart your system by clicking on the panel at the top and then click on power off and then click on restart. Or you can simply type the command sudo reboot now, and it will reboot your computer after you type your password. Again, we are in step 4. We're almost done with the step number 4. Okay, now I'm just gonna go full screen on this, and I'm gonna type my password here. So now I am going to unmount this drive by right-clicking and clicking on eject. I'm gonna open a web browser. We have Firefox installed by default. Just make sure you give it a second or two. This it might take a little bit to open. And here I'm gonna go to cis106.com, because now I can just follow my instructions from here without needing to use the web browser on my actual desktop. So I'm gonna click on lab number 2, and I'm gonna move straight to step number 4. Install disable animations. This is where we stopped, right? So let me zoom in a little bit, and now I need to run this command over here, and let me open a terminal. So click on terminal, and I'm gonna put the terminal next to my other window. Let me make the screen a little bit bigger for you, and I can simply right click and paste over here. Press enter, type your password, and we're almost done. Perfect. Now we're going to disable the animations. Now you might be asking, what are those animations? Well, notice when you open the menu, look how that animation of zooming in and zooming out is working over here. So these do take system resources. Although it doesn't take a lot of resources, it does take resources, right? I have a modern CPU, but if you have an older CPU, that might, take some resources that you want to get back. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna disable those animations to make our system snappier and also make it consume less resources. So I'm gonna click on enter over here, and now notice what happens when I click on the menu. It just pops up into the screen, no animation whatsoever. Now we're going to remove and install some applications that we are going to need throughout the semester. So we're gonna get it done right now so that we don't have to do it later. Now I'm gonna clear the window over here, and I'm going to copy this command. Just copy the first one, paste it over here, and press enter. We're almost done. Now let's clean the system. We're gonna use these two commands for that. 1 and then 2. Perfect. So now we're going to install all of these programs over here. Now notice that you can install you can run these commands one by one line at a time, no problem. Or you can copy this and run them in a script. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna run this in a script so that I can go I can just automate this and go and grab a cup of coffee. So I'm gonna copy all of these commands, and I'm gonna open a text editor. Now over here, I'm gonna paste the commands, and I'm gonna click on save. I'm gonna make sure that I'm saving this in home, and I'm gonna call this a script.sh. I'm gonna click on save. I can close this now, and here in my terminal, I'm gonna do bash script.sh. Press enter. If it asks you for your password, make sure you type your password. If it doesn't ask you for your password, it's because you recently typed it in the previous command, so you should be fine. Now that's gonna take a while because we're installing a lot of applications, as you can see here. So I'm gonna pause the video for now, and then we are going to resume once all of these packages have been installed. Now when you get to this question over here, make sure you press Y and enter. Okay, now that all these programs have been installed, we're going to install another package called Ubuntu Restricted Extras. So we're gonna copy this and we're gonna paste it over here. Some of the packages over here include Microsoft funds that we might not need, but it's good to have them there. So we're gonna, here, when you get to this screen, this is what you're gonna do. You're gonna press the tab key to move to the OK button, and then you're gonna press the space bar to select it. Now you're gonna use the arrow keys to select yes, and then press enter so that you can accept the end user licensing agreement. And you are almost done because this package doesn't take long to install. It's actually pretty quick. So while that's doing, I'm gonna scroll down over here and go to the next step. Now, the default screenshot application in Ubuntu is fine, but we need something a little bit more powerful. We're gonna use Flameshot for that. You already installed the program in the previous script. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna set it as default, and we're gonna create a shortcut so that when we press the print screen key on the keyboard, Flameshot is launched, and it just makes our life much easier. So now we're gonna click on the menu over here, and we're gonna type preferences. Click on settings, then click here in the magnifying glass, click it so that you can open the search menu and type keyboard. Click on keyboard, and now scroll all the way down to where it says view and customize shortcuts. Here scroll all the way down and click on custom shortcuts. Then click on add shortcut, and then here is what the name of the command is, Flameshot. And then command name is Flameshot GUI. Take a second, make sure that you're spelling it correctly, because otherwise it's not gonna work. And now click on set shortcut. Press the print screen key on your keyboard, or if you want a different keyboard key combination, that's fine. It's gonna tell you that there is already an application using it. Do you wanna replace it? And we're gonna say yes, we will much like to replace that key. And that's fine. We have successfully added this shortcut. Now we can just close this, and we can close this. And if you press the print screen key, give it a second for the application to launch because it hasn't been launched. And now you can just select an area of the screen to actually get a screenshot from. So now notice that I selected this, and the beautiful thing about Flameshot is that I can annotate this. Hey, I some text. I can also draw in here if I want to. Oops, sorry, I aborted the screenshot by mistake. Let me just take another one. I can annotate it if I want to. I can blur things if I want to. The channel has a video dedicated to Flameshot if you're interested in exploring this application further. So now I'm gonna press the escape key to exit this window. Notice that that's gonna abort the screenshot, and let's move on. Now, step 5, we're almost done. We're gonna set up Git in our virtual machine, because from this point on, we're not using Windows, we're not using Mac, everything is done inside Linux, and we're gonna send all of our stuff to GitHub using the command line. No more using the graphical interface. That is history. That stayed in the past. We're not doing that anymore, right? So follow this step as they are laid out over here. So what we're gonna do here is we need to sign in to our GitHub account. So allow me a second so that I can get my testing GitHub account set up. Okay, so now I'm gonna click on sign in over here, type my email address that I used to sign into my GitHub account, and then I'm gonna type in my password. So my password for that is right over here, and a verification code has been sent to my email address. I'm gonna go and copy that now. I'm gonna paste my code, and now I am right over here in my GitHub account. Okay, so we got that part done. Now we're gonna set up our username and we're gonna set up our email address. Now what I'm gonna do is, and I recommend you do this too, just in case you need these commands later on in the future. So again, we're gonna open a text editor one more time. And we are gonna simply copy this, paste it here, copy this, paste it here. And now what we're gonna do is we are gonna simply fill in the gaps, right? So this here is my username, so I'm just gonna copy this here and type it right over here. My email address is this@gmail.com. And now I'm just gonna copy this and paste it in my terminal. Again, copy this and paste it in my terminal. Good. Now we're gonna generate an SSH key. Again, I'm gonna copy this and I'm gonna paste it over here. So my email address is this one over here. So let's paste it right over here. So make sure that you type everything correctly, just like you see over here. Let me see if I can make this bigger so that you can see better. Nope, that's fine. Yeah, we are going to edit this. Let's make this 19. Good, perfect. So I'm gonna copy my SSH command and I'm gonna paste it over here on my terminal. Press enter over here to save the key on the right place. Press enter for the passphrase. No passphrase, no passphrase at all. You're welcome to add a passphrase, but every time you use the git commands, you're gonna type the same passphrase. Since this is just a testing environment, we're just gonna use no passphrase for now. Then finally, we are gonna copy this command. Again, I'm gonna also paste this command over here because I might need that in the future. So I'm gonna paste it over here and type enter. I'm gonna copy these entire 2 lines. So copy them to the clipboard and then go to your GitHub account. Click on your user, then click on settings, then click on SSH and GPG keys. Click on new key, give it a name. I'm gonna call mine Ubuntu VM. And then I'm gonna paste the key over here. Make sure you don't have any trailing spaces. So I'm gonna delete that trailing space that you see over there. All of that needs to be in a single line. Add SSH key, and we're almost done. Now we're gonna test this SSH connection. So I'm gonna copy this command. Again, I'm gonna save it over here in my notes, and then I'm gonna paste it in my terminal and press enter. Here you need to type yes, the full word, yes, just like that. Press enter and you should see this message. If you see an error message here, there is something wrong with your SSH key. There is a character that is missing or a character that is extra. You didn't delete the trailing space, something of that regard. And I suggest you start this step over again. If you can't figure it out, Slack me and I'll be there to help you. Okay, now we are going to clone, same thing as download, our GitHub repository from the web. So what we're gonna do here is simple. Let's copy this command and let's paste it over here. Now, you see what it says, your GitHub username / your repository name here? This is what we're talking about, right? This, which we got from here. Right there. This is your GitHub username and this is your GitHub repository, right? As you see it over here. So I'm gonna cut this, right? Because we don't really need it there. And I'm gonna paste it right over here. After the colon, and then just paste. Make sure that yours is just like mine, except that yours is gonna include your username and your repository. After you do this, all we have to do is simply copy this command as you see it over there and then paste it in your terminal. Press enter and this is the output that you should expect. Now, if you open the file manager, you should see a folder called CIS106. This is your GitHub repository. You should have the same files that I have because you completed lab number 1 and week report number 1. So let's close the file manager. And it's time for you to submit the lab. So there are specific things that I want for this lab to prove that you completed it. So first of all, let's clear our terminal screen. We don't need it. We don't need all that mess anymore. Not at all. What we are gonna do first is organize our GitHub repository. So open a file manager. We're gonna do this graphically. Open your GitHub repository, and here you're gonna create a folder called labs, all lowercase please, and a folder called week reports. Notice that is camel case, lowercase w, uppercase r. And then here we're gonna create a folder called class notes. Also, as you can see class notes. Nope, it's supposed to be called notes. So I'm just gonna rename this to notes. Good. And then finally, we need to create another one called cheat sheets. Camel case again, lowercase c, uppercase s. So we got labs, week reports. Oh, we also need, I don't know why I call it final exam. It should be final project. So we're gonna call this final project, not final exam. I need to fix this later on after I complete this video. So we got cheat sheets, final project, labs, notes, and week reports. Now, we need to move these files to their respective folders. So I know that the GitHub URL, the GitHub image, week report 1, week report 1.pdf. By the way, you can do this by clicking on one file and then pressing the control key. Leave the control key pressed and then select the files that you want to select, just like you do on your Windows or your Mac computer. So I need the GitHub one, I need week report 1, and week report 1.md. I also need the Slack PNG right over here. This was part of the week reports. Now I know everything else was part of my lab. So I'm gonna move this to labs. So now I'm gonna go into week reports. Here I'm gonna create a WR1 for week report 1, and I'm gonna move all of this to WR1. Now I'm gonna go to labs and I'm gonna repeat the same process. Here I'm gonna create a lab 1 folder, and then I'm just gonna move everything to lab 1. Perfectly fine. So all the lab 1 files are in one place and all the week reports files are in one place. This is gonna make our life very, very, very easy. There's one thing that I missed, and if I go to lab 1, there is this cheat sheet that shouldn't be there. So I'm just gonna cut the cheat sheet and I'm gonna put it in the cheat sheet folder that's supposed to be there. So now we have my CIS106 file over there, which is perfectly fine. Now that our GitHub repository is organized, we're gonna prepare our submission. So I'm gonna go into labs and I'm gonna create a new folder called lab2. Great. Now I can close the file manager and I'm gonna open VS Code. But we don't have VS Code installed. See, VS Code is not installed. So what we're gonna do is that we're gonna install VS Code. So we're gonna search for VS Code and we're gonna click on download. We're gonna select the .deb package and we're gonna wait for this download to finish. After I finish this video, I'm gonna create another section over here for the presentation. I'm gonna put it right after we create the Flameshot file on how to install VS Code for your Ubuntu machine. That's something that escaped me. So we're gonna here click on code and just gonna select software install and click on open. Later on, I'll show you how you can do this with the command line. We're gonna do that in the following presentation. This might take a little bit, so give it some time and then click on install. It's gonna ask you for your super secure password and then just wait until the installer does its thing. Again, we're doing it the simple way because we haven't covered software installation via the command line. We're gonna take it slow. Okay, as you can see, software is already installed and it's telling us that we can open it. So I'm gonna close this, right? It's always important to not have a lot of applications running. Remember, we have limited RAM in this virtual machine. We're gonna search for VS Code and we're gonna open VS Code. Now there are extensions that we need to install here, just like we did on Windows, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. So once VS Code opens, we are gonna click on the gears icon over here and then we're gonna click on extensions. Whoop. Right here, extensions. We're gonna search for Markdown. Markdown. We need Markdown, the extension. Then we also need Markdown Preview Enhance. We also need Markdown All-in-One, and we also need Markdown PDF. Okay, now we are going to install spell checker. Right? You don't really need a spell checker. If you don't want it, that's fine. But I like to spell check my code and my comments. And finally, we are going to install Live Server because it's gonna come handy to us later on in the semester. All the extensions are almost done. Perfect. Now we're gonna click on Files over here. And now we're gonna click on Open Folder. You can open this dialog as well by clicking on File and Open Folder, right? Two ways of doing it. Oops, right here behind me. Now we're gonna click once in CIS 106. Just click once to select it, then click on Open. I'm gonna do this one more time. File, Open Folder. Click CIS 106 once and then click on Open. Notice that this is the same as we have in the computer, in the file manager. Now let me make this a little bigger and let me go full screen for this. Now we're gonna click on Labs, lab number 2, and then we're gonna click on Create New File. Notice the file is gonna be created inside lab number 2. We're gonna call this lab2.md, and we're just gonna copy from here the markdown that I already provided to you, which is right over here, lab 2 submission. You can just click over here and then paste it in our VS Code window. Let's save our file, file and save. And now we need to generate these screenshots. Sorry, that is my mistake. We need to generate these screenshots. This is misspelled here. It's supposed to be neo fetch. Right, now let's minimize VS Code, and what we're gonna do is open the terminal and then run the command neo fetch. Great, but that looks too big, so I'm gonna press Ctrl and minus to make the screen a little bit smaller. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna clear the screen over here and I'm gonna run it again. Neo fetch. Just want this to look a little better. Clear, neo fetch. Okay, that's a little better. I'm gonna scroll up and then I'm gonna take a screenshot of this. So I'm gonna press the print screen key on the keyboard and then select the area of the window that I want, which is all of this. If print screen is not working, you can always launch Flameshot by searching for the application itself. Okay, now we're gonna click on save. We're gonna save this image in our home, CIS 106, labs, lab number 2, and we're gonna name this file neofetch.png. Click on save. Now we're gonna run this command over here. So we're just gonna copy this, and then we're gonna clear the screen and then paste this command here. And that's it. We're gonna take a screenshot of this. Again, print the screen. And then save. And we're supposed to call this file a script.png. Make sure that you are in the right folder, lab number 2, which is inside labs, which is inside CIS 106. A script.png. Make sure you type the name correctly, please. Okay, screenshots have been captured. I can close the terminal now. We're gonna leave this open again because I'm gonna do something with that later. Open VS Code, and now let's do a preview of our file. So right click in an empty area and click on Markdown Preview Enhanced. Are your screenshots showing? If you can see them here, you're good. If you cannot see them here, make sure that the files were saved in the right place, that the markdown is typed correctly, and that you're not making any typos on the file name. I'm gonna close this. And let's continue with instructions. Now we are gonna run these git commands over here, and we're gonna do them in the order that you see them. So we are gonna open VS Code, click on Terminal, and click on New Terminal. The first command is git pull. It should say already up to date. The next command is git add period. The next command is git commit -m and then lab2 complete. And finally, git push. You should see a message just like mine. If you did, that means you did everything correctly. If you didn't, you did something wrong. Please send me a screenshot of the error message and we can troubleshoot it together. Now, if I go to my GitHub page and I refresh it, notice that my GitHub repository on GitHub looks just like my GitHub repository in my local machine in Ubuntu. The only difference is that empty folders are not going to appear over here because they're empty, and that is perfectly fine. So I'm going to click on labs, then lab number 2, then lab number 2.md. This is how the document should look like. You see? Perfect. Now, what are you going to submit in Blackboard? You need to give me the URL to the lab.md file in GitHub. And you also need to give me lab2.pdf. But we made a mistake. We forgot to convert this file to PDF. Now, in this scenario, all we have to do is go back to VS Code, right click, convert to PDF, give it a second so that the extension does its magic in the background. And now that we have the PDF file over here, oh, apparently the PDF preview, oh, I didn't install this extension, so let's go to extensions, PDF preview. I missed one extension, which is no bueno. Good. Now that I have my PDF, I am good. But we don't have this file on GitHub. So all we have to do is repeat the commands. Git pull, git add period, git commit -m, add it, PDF lab2, and then git push. And notice that now, if I refresh the page, my PDF file is there with no problem. Now, my PDF file is there. Now, let's submit this lab. So go to Blackboard. So I'm gonna go to PCC. That's way too many C's. Let's sign into our account. I am surprised I typed that password correctly. I never do it right. Let's go to Blackboard. Courses. Then whatever course you are signing to, I'm just gonna pick CE2 for now. Let me go to Student View. Then we're gonna go to Labs. I believe that I don't have labs number 2 enabled yet, so I'm probably gonna have to exit the student view. Labs, yep, it's not available. The submission is not available yet. But over here, you're gonna find the Dropbox for lab number 2. All you're gonna have to do is click on lab number 2. Then over there, you're gonna submit the URL to this file here. So you're gonna copy and paste the URL to this file, and then you are gonna upload the PDF file for lab number 2, this PDF file, right? Upload this file and type this URL in the submission, and you have successfully completed lab number 2. Now, I have some closing notes on this lab that are important, so bear with me for a moment. Remember the files that we have here on the text editor. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna save these commands because they're gonna come handy later on, trust me, when we are troubleshooting. But we're gonna put a comment on these commands for a little bit. Now over here, we're gonna call this git global config variables, right? Generate SSH key. Just a very brief description. Show SSH key. And then finally here, test SSH connection. Only one is needed. And then finally here, we're gonna put this pull clone my GitHub repository. And then finally over here, we're gonna do git commands I need. And we're gonna copy these commands that we have over here. This explanation, just as you see it, we're gonna put it over here. Because you are gonna be using these commands quite a lot. So it's gonna be a good idea for you to have an explanation of these commands handy. Right, so what git clone does, what git pull does, what git add period does, what git commit does, and what git push does. It's important to keep them over there because you are gonna use them all the semester, and I'm gonna, every once in a while, I'm gonna tell you, hey, clone this repository, hey, pull the changes, hey, push your changes to GitHub, and you need to get accustomed to this terminology. So save this file in your documents folder, or you can save it in your home directory, wherever you can find them. Just don't put them in your GitHub repository, because what if your GitHub repository is actually what breaks? So let's just save them somewhere else. So I'm gonna put it in documents in my case, and I'm gonna call it GitHub sheet. .txt. Click on save, and now you can close this document, you can close the file manager, and you are done. Now let's go over the special note, because those are important. You already saw how exactly these git commands are supposed to work, but a special note number one we didn't go over. Creating virtual machines is very important. You need to know how to do it. You're gonna do a lot of them as your career as a student and in technology progresses. Practice this command. Do it on your spare time. Figure out how to make a Windows 10 virtual machine. Install other Linux distributions. Just play around and have some fun. That's it. I'll see you in the next video, or I see you in class.